You are not going to believe some of the predictions I made this year. When you see the number one prediction on this top 5 list, you'll be asking yourself, Quinny, are you a time traveler? Do you have a crystal ball? Or are you in the know, ITK? And the answer to all 3 of those things is no. But the content on this channel isn't just about reviews and analysis of things that have went on, but can we forecast, can we look into the future and imagine what is ahead for certain clubs, players or managers, depending on, what it is we're talking about. And this year, guys, honestly, looking back and trying to make a top 5 predictions list, I was blown away at some of the stuff I was actually forecasting and predicting weeks and months ahead of not only it being rumoured and spoke about in the press, but it actually happening and coming to fruition. And in the video today, to kind of bookmark the end of the season, I thought let's drop out the top 5 predictions that I made in the Premier League this season that were absolutely on the money. If you're new to this channel and you enjoy this sort of content that is actually proactive and actually looks ahead and isn't just an echo chamber of what's in the headlines and the rumour mills, then do hit the subscribe button and hit the like button for more content like this. And I want to see in the comment section what your favourite prediction is, or the most unbelievable thing that I managed to come out with that you're like, wow, how did you call that, big man? And this should be kicking off a massive summer of content on the channel, looking at the transfer rumour mill as well as everything else that goes on in the summer with the Euros and, everything else in between. And yeah, but let's just get stuck straight into it. And at number 5, I was doing a lot of videos in the summer transfer window around Newcastle's business with all the headlines and all the money that they were spending on Sandro Tonali and a few other ones. And across a few videos, the Geordies weren't too happy with me, but I was telling you all the transfer business was way below subpar, and it really did put the writing on the wall that Newcastle were not going to have the same type of season domestically that they had the year before. But when you look at the business that was done in the summer transfer window, it was clear to see that if any bumps in the road did come Newcastle's way, the wheels could fall off, and it does feel like this season is an absolute free fall. But there is a silver lining or two that could save Newcastle's season. Eddie Howe made an absolute gaffe of the summer transfer window, but I think when you compare Newcastle to the rest of the Premier League and you particularly look at their transfer business, Eddie Howe has a track record at Bournemouth of really bad transfer business, and that's why even though they spent money for a small team, they never advanced, they never kicked on. It's one of the main things I had reservations around Eddie Howe getting the glamour Newcastle job with all the money at his disposal. Again, Geordies are always telling me that FFP is a real constrictor, a real constraint for Newcastle. So to buy Barnes and Livramento for, let's say, the thick end of £80 million, never mind adding in Lewis Hong, another left back, for £28 million, you don't have any goals. There's no backup to Gordon. Yeah, Barnes, okay, fine. 44 million backup for Gordon. There was no real backup for Almiron. And Wilson and Isak on paper, if both of them are fit, yeah, cool, I totally get that. But as it pans out, not just one of them, but both of them aren't available. And there's no layer behind that to help the team in the 90 minutes actually keep an attacking presence throughout the game without them wilting and kind of dying out, or to rotate, or if both of them are out, you still have a guy that can play. So, like I say, I just really wanted to drive home. He has absolutely dropped a clanger. Newcastle should right now be in the position that Tottenham or Aston Villa are in the league. And Eddie Howe and Newcastle weren't too far off proving me wrong. They had a real heroic effort all the way through the season, despite all the speed bumps and all the hurdles that came their way. But when the dust settled and it's all said and done, and we look at the table, sitting in 7th, 3 points behind Chelsea, who have been a laughingstock this year. Only 6 points behind Tottenham, 8 off of Aston Villa, who have been the real kind of rising star clubs in the league. Aston Villa obviously having a semi-final campaign in European football to contend with, midweek football all season long, and Tottenham have had just as bad an injury crisis as anyone else. I do think that in hindsight, a lot of Newcastle fans, a lot of Geordies will probably agree with me now that Newcastle could have got back into the Champions League this year if their transfer policy was a bit more coherent and a bit more on point. But I do think it was a real heroic effort from the guys, and they were really close to proving me and anyone else that said the same thing wrong. And at number 4 is another team that I had a lot of fun following through the summer transfer window. They were putting their money where their mouth is, and Aston Villa, one of the richest clubs in the league, were starting to back the Unai Emery and Monchi Moneyball plan of attack, the assault on the league that they had been ironing out. And I don't think many people were taking Aston Villa too seriously this summer, but in the video here I was joined by Sam Ty. We were evaluating the Moussa Diaby transfer, which for me was the real wake-up call to everyone, that Aston Villa were here to, upset the natural order of things and really have a monumental season, and I made them my dark horses for the year.
And if Diaby is the calibre that Villa are looking to bring in now, then, you know, I think it's going to be a really exciting season. Villa, for me, is probably neck and neck with Spurs in my reckoning for dark horse surprise team of the season, if you get me.
Well, what does that mean? Are you pimping top 4 here?
Like top 5,
right?
Top 6 kind of vibes, you know, like to really upset the apple cart. Like somebody will have a great season and you'll be like, wow.
Now, honestly, I did stop short of saying I do think Villa will get into 4th, because I just imagined they were going to go all the way to a European final. And with, you know, if you go and watch that whole video, me and Sam really went through the depth that Aston Villa have. It's hard to imagine that they would get top 4 and all the way to a European semi-final, or, you know, a final's only one more game, isn't it? I would have thought they might have been in Tottenham's position and maybe won the Europa Conference League or something like that, but they defied expectations. That first portion of the season where they got into Christmas and they were maybe just out of a shout of being in title contention, I think was beyond everyone's imagination, but it did really epitomise what we thought Aston Villa were going to be doing this year, and that would be the real dark horses of the league, the one that would catch everyone cold. Like, wow, they are here and they mean business. And at number 3, this one was based on a little bit of bias coming into it, but it was Ange Postecoglou who was going to take Tottenham to a new level this year. As a Celtic fan, I've seen firsthand what Ange is capable of and the style of football that he looks to deploy. There was a bit of a, are they in the title fight around Christmas? And as we know, the back end of the season, they have just slipped out that top 4 picture to allow Aston Villa to get in ahead of them. But they were very close to pulling it off. And as soon as Ange was appointed way back in the summer, I was jumping on, defending the big man and telling Tottenham fans, you've got tons of reasons to be excited for this year.
I cannot believe the ignorance and the disrespect that's going around the Ange Postecoglou Spurs appointment. And I thought, I've got to make a video to give Spurs fans 3 reasons to be excited about this appointment and why I believe this is going to be a monumental season for Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou. Ange is a manager that has already proven that he has the personality, the ability to scale up his tactics, his philosophy. Of course, we're all going to look down, Celtic fans included, not me, but a lot of other ones. Australian football, very much a bottom tier division in the world terms. Japan, a little bit above that. But in the interim of that, he was the Australia manager, qualifying for World Cups, but also winning Asia Cups with Australia. And you might discredit that and think, oh, well, it's just really Australia, Korea and Japan. Who else is in there? But Australia have not won very many of them. High level, high expectation, tournament football, final situations. He is Australian. He's super patriotic. That is his, you know, it's like, it's the Asia Cup final for Australia. You know, it's a big accolade for him to do. Then scale that up into the J-League where you're not speaking English. You're using translators, different culture, different style of football, out the hoo-ha. We all know about that. But to then translate that again into Scotland and into the Champions League, I don't know what more you could possibly ask of a manager at that point to show their ability to scale up. Now, of course, this is the ultimate scale up question mark, is going to the Premier League, the pinnacle of world football, where the elite of the elite play, where all the money is, where all the attention is, where all the science, the technology, everything is at its peak in the Premier League. This will be the big test for him, but I think there's far too much proof in the pudding to be showing the disrespect and everything else that's going around him. Even when I was there against Man City, where it was on tenterhooks, and I wouldn't even say the atmosphere was that great, but the noise was still incredible. I think it's a fantastic petri dish of an environment for him to come into and continue to scale up.
Now, I do feel it's got a bit spiky with Ange and Tottenham towards the back end of the season here, but he's a manager who's very undermanned at the moment. He does need more players at his disposal, and still, a lot of the players at that club are not Ange ball, compatible, as it were. So I think, we did a great job of calling that one. The Ange was going to take to the Premier League. Tottenham were going to surprise a lot of people and play exciting attacking football that would get the fans back on board and really drive Tottenham in the direction that they're looking to go in. Now, Man City won the Champions League last year, and like all champions do, they went into the transfer market and they were looking to strengthen. And with the signings of Jeremy Doku, who, if you've been following this guy through his rise through European football as a young player, he models so closely to Neymar. I found this a really exciting signing. And then the signing of Gvardiol, who was the premier up-and-coming left-back, left-sided centre-back in European football. For me, this felt like City were really breaking the mould on a bit of the usual transfer policy and going and getting top elite-level youth players. And for me, both of these guys spelt the end of Jack Grealish. But first of all, Gvardiol, I don't think he's coming in to take Nathan Ake's place. Now, with Laporte seemingly on the way out, I do feel that this is an Ake spot all day, every day. Gvardiol
does give you a wee bit of rotation relief for this, but I really see Gvardiol coming into this position. Gvardiol, when he first broke onto the scene for Croatia, and really some of his best performances at Leipzig, is when he's able to charge up the pitch, really up this left side here, and he really does give you exactly what João Cancelo gives you on the right-hand side. He's big, he's brave, he's powerful, he's got fantastic technique and an eye for, creative football. He's so good for such a young player as well. So I could see him more often than not being used in this role here, up and down this left wing and breaking into the box as that attacking defender type. Now, I think Jack Grealish does a very specific job for the team that I don't think Doku would necessarily be able to replicate in terms of being that, he's not quite a left wing back, but Jack Grealish really does leave everything out there on the pitch. There's no two ways about that. Not saying Doku wouldn't, but I don't think you're going to get that out of him necessarily on this side of the game. But I think this side of the game, you get everything Grealish gives you, and maybe even a little bit more, you could argue. I could only see him really filling in on this left wing position here, similarly in any capacity. I know Gvardiol gives you a bit more security, perhaps, to allow him a wee bit more freedom to do that, and maybe that's the kind of thing that happens. But I think that kind of thing is probably only going to happen when this kind of box midfield is able to form of Silva. Could be Kovacic, he could put Silva back here and put De Bruyne in. It could be a few different things. But I think if that's the kind of shape that they go for, and it's just extreme that you are all the left wing attacking outlet, then it will be compensated for elsewhere, in other parts of the team.
And really, it's taken towards the back end of the season. Doku really, he's affected the results kind of all season long, with a bit of a lull in the middle of the season. But for Gvardiol, it's not really been until this final furlong where he's emerged as being, a decisive player for Man City. Now, we have seen him over the last, couple of weeks, games of the season. He has played with Grealish once or twice when he's been relied upon a bit more for his defensive qualities. But I think as the games have went on, we're looking at Crystal Palace here, Real Madrid away. It's not taken long before Doku and Gvardiol end up playing together with the Luton Town game here, before Grealish comes back in for the second leg of Real Madrid. And then since then, it has been Gvardiol who's been on the left-hand side. We've seen that midfield four be those tight midfielders of like Foden and Bernardo in the wide areas to allow Gvardiol that space to get up and forward. And it really does feel now that Grealish has been firmly phased out of the squad over the last month or so. Not phased out in the terms of bombed out or whatever, but the evolution of the Pep Guardiola Man City machine is taking on this new form now. And with the output you get from Doku, with the output you get from Gvardiol, it just puts Grealish's lack of contribution in stark contrast to it. He's already been linked with a return to Villa perhaps, or something else like that in the summer. And, he's a bit of a City legend, obviously winning the Champions League and trebles and all that good stuff with all the money that gets spent on him, but he's not been that productive. And you've seen from these two guys, like we spoke about when they were transferred in, that they add so much more to what City were missing last year. And my number one prediction that I made this season, now the Crystal Palace fans loved the video that went out, who is Ole Glasner, but all the way back in October, way before Roy Hodgson was even being maligned as, let's just replace Roy now and all the rest of it. I made a video telling the Crystal Palace fans we need to get ready for Roy Hodgson's replacement, and I went through the top targets of managers that Crystal Palace could have went through, and you'll never guess who the number one target was. But for me, the number one guy, if I was in charge of Crystal Palace's manager department, I would be looking at is Ole Glasner. Ole Glasner took Frankfurt and won the Europa League with them, and the style of football they played for a couple of years was breathtaking, very transition-based, where in a 3-5-2, they'll sit tight and defend, but as soon as they turn the ball over and they win it, they'll attack into space with pace and be clinical and kill the opponent on the counter-attack. With managing Frankfurt, he took them into Champions League football as well, and overall, he managed to really negotiate a lot of difficult transfer windows, losing best players, having to rediscover some team identity over and over again. And that style of play, I believe he could really adapt to this Crystal Palace team, and really for where Crystal Palace are now, solid defensively, and where their creative options are, that style of play that he implements, I think would probably fit them like a glove, which would make transfer window business a bit easier to deal with. Again, I don't know if this is two predictions or one, but when Glasner came in, I did say they are the wildcard team. They're going to be taking all sorts of points off of people you do not expect, and they're going to be scoring goals. And I think in terms of how a team finished the season, Crystal Palace were the team that sprinted over the finishing line. And coming into the summer, I think they're one of the teams that have got the most reason to be excited about their chances for improvement in the next season. I had a lot of fun going through my top 5 predictions with you guys today. I hope you enjoyed them too. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more content like this as we go through the summer transfer window, obviously the Euros, and everything else in between. On screen there now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.